Okay, welcome to the next video, video 7, I believe. And again, if you haven't watched the other videos beforehand, it might be a good idea to watch them before getting into this one because you could be out of place, severely out of place. I think I'm nuts. Well, you probably already think I'm nuts either way, but yeah, it's going to be out of place. You're not really going to get anything out of it as much. So watch the other videos first. Now, this one, up to this point, they'd made the leap into the eternities. They'd done the trial by fire. Where yada yada yada. They got used to the really difficult task of living in the eternities, living for very long periods of time. We had the stability that was made by advancements in education, advancements in family, advancements in society and how it's structured, advancements in things like, I don't think I mentioned this enough, but one of the big complaints that people had that were leaving in the early times, they knew they were leaving to die, but they were thinking, they were saying that why in the world would I want to just live like a prisoner forever when I can at least live now? And back then, in the early times, in our group, the group that made it, there was a bit too much work and not enough play compared to what they felt later that should be. So, yeah, adjustments were made to make sure that people were happier. And even scientifically, you look at it and look at it, say, okay, well, what percentage of happiness and joy and this and that can we attain in our group? And that is something that's studied and worked towards, is the not just the morale, but the joy and well-being of the group. But on to this video. This video is about the problems that were still around, the continuing educational problems of the kids, even in the more stable times. Because it was more stable, but certainly the goal was 0 kids lost, 0 people gone, and it just wasn't happening still. It was better. We were more stable as a group. Didn't really have as many times that we were going to wipe each other out, or things like that. But there were problems, and I'll get into those right now then. So, the descriptions of society that I got in the last video, as I was sort of hinting before, the structure in how the kids go up from when they're born to when they get to be an adult, that is a lot of how it is now. Of course, I was trying to describe it as it was before the Earth life, but of course I get sidetracked and sort of include a lot of what it is like now. And honestly, I don't know as much about the structure and detail back then. I know of course, a lot more than a lot of but I really am not the biggest expert at the pre-Earth kids' parental structures. So anyway, but one of the things though that they had was they didn't have good enough structure and experience with hormones. They just didn't, because one of the things that you find out over the long term is that simulations, as accurate and as real as they seem while you're in the simulations, always generally tend to produce at least a little bit of a result of, oh, well, I really do understand that, and that really makes a lot of sense. But I'm not like those people. I wouldn't make such stupid mistakes. I know better now. And you get that over and over and over again. And most cases, just a thing that people, learn and grow and get over as they get older. But in some cases, it's a dangerous thing where they really truly feel that they should be able to live more, to have sexual relations earlier, to fool around and experiment with some of the things that other people experimented with, because they know that there are boundaries and they don't want to go out of those boundaries, of course, and get into real danger like the others did. But there get to be some problems. There was no such thing as a perfect education, because we're people that have free will. You can't force people into a mold. We certainly can make robots, but what's the point? We are human. We are free. Freedom only happens if we choose to live inside the boundaries that allow us to live forever, not if we're forced to do it. We can't force people to do it. We just have to make sure that they understand all of the choices around them, and enough to see that this is the most logical way of going. But so we don't want to control other people's minds or take away their free agency. We really don't. But on the other hand, the hormonal drive for reproduction, not even considering the other many flawed parts of the mind and body, it acts like a drug that many lack either the desire or the ability to control. They don't want to fight it. They don't feel like they need to fight it. And if they felt like they'd want to, they just can't. So this leads to violence. It leads to fights. It leads with children having children that are burdens to raise. It leads to a very detrimental thing to the long-term health of society and to the structures that we'd built so that they could build deep meaning. I mean, the thing is, in this short environment in Earth, you throw a kid into existence, they might have a rough childhood, but really they get on their own for an adulthood. There you go, and there you go, have a fun life, and then it's over. But in the extreme long term, time is a great pressure. Time is like sand. And I have to remember to tell you again this, because this is important. This is what I was told too by them. Time is like sand. A little bit of it, you brush it right off. A little more, it gets inconvenient, but a lot of it, and it will crush you every time if you're not living right. And the structure of the family that we made up there, the way that we can rely on each other and trust each other. Trust is so important. Relying on each other is so important. Being there for each other in roles that provide support and stability, dependability, and people that always have your back. And relationships where you go close to people. It makes it easier. Like I've said many, many times, and I'm sure you're tired of it by now, but the novelty of the relationships that the young people crave, not just leading to the fights and violence, but it disturbs stability. It leads to kids getting born too quickly to parents that were really not prepared for it. And it leads to a lifestyle that is more meant for excitement and less for wisdom. And while we would never want to do without excitement is great. We have to be able to first choose our destiny and choose how we wish to live. We need to understand our emotions. We need to understand our hormones and be able to put them in place and use them how we want to. We cannot have the processes that the body creates control us before we have the ability to think and have wisdom to put them into the right spots in our lives. I mean, look around the world as we have it now. I mean, hormones control you. So many people, before they're able to really think for themselves objectively as to what their hormones are doing to them, and it gets them into trouble. Whether it's not just sex, but it's anger, it's violence, it's it's a lot of stuff that just leads to a mess. We need to be able to objectively use our bodies in ways that we determine. We can't be sidelined and smacked in the face too soon by things that we can't really understand or control all that well. I mean, no one's saying that you should do without them. We've bumped up hormones like crazy up there. The right ones. The ones that draw closer together. The ones that don't lead to violence. And yeah, we've like I said, they've put a lot of crazy, interesting stuff that you just blow your mind into relationships between, sex basically. But right here, you have a point in which the kids don't adequately understand this. And okay, I went too much long discussion about all that, but now you have the reality of what to do with them, what to do. You also, on the other side, okay, I'm going to go into another subject that's going to wrap neatly into this one. Earth. What about Earth? We had a people down here that this was another natural dimension. We've talked about dimensions before. I don't know how many natural dimensions there are. I said before that I know there's at least 2. I believe there to be more. Probably at least 3 or 4, but really, who knows? There could be, who knows? There could be 100 natural dimensions. I don't know. I know that of the dimensions, the artificial dimensions that we've created are far more numerous than the natural ones, in terms of what I'm thinking, but they're so closely guarded on their dimensional stuff that it's really hard to know. But yeah, long and the short of it is, and if you skipped around and missed the part about how I told you about dimensions work, I'm not going to explain it too many times because people are trying to get that knowledge and using things like, I believe, CERN to do it. And they're, of course, barking up the wrong tree, but that's okay. Let's let them. So, the problem is Earth. There were a people there that were very, very, very similar to our people. A little shorter, a lot more primitive. They developed later. But having the long, long, long lifespans that we do, you can't help but think that sometime they might be a threat. So what to do with them? You don't want to wipe them out because, well, we're civilized and all that, right? You think? Oh, probably. Yeah, we can't wipe them out. Well, at least we didn't want to. So what else can we do with them? And if you know anything about our leadership, then you could see, well, let's at least for now observe and get data. We don't need to make decisions right now when we could make a decision later. If you knew them, you'd understand. But yeah, so they observe them. They collect data. They love collecting data. They collect data about everything. Data collecting is one of their favorite. You wouldn't believe how much data they have about everything. They collect data about everything, about the societies that split off and went their own ways in the past. They collect data about every little individual part of the genome and what it does. It's no accident in how they're adjusting genomes. It's not ever going to be something that is just like, oh, well, what makes you think this part of the genome is better than that? And please, you people, if you're just skipping into this, it's not about making, the Aryan white, blonde-haired, blue eyes. Just there you go, the super race that the Nazis are doing. No, I mean that's a corruption on what the ideas is. Like I said, race is too big of a box to be concerned with. The type of genetics you're looking at are really, really small changes. They're little bits on this part, little bits on that part, and you don't even get anywhere near the race level. I mean, and they collect data on so many things, including every little minuscule part of the genome, that it's just crazy. So, going along with that, this is what they were doing. And so what natural extension to do than to send the kids there of a certain age so that they can get more experience with natural people, because they'd seen lots of simulators before. They've been in the simulators. They're very, very realistic. But hey, there's these people here. Might as well go watch them. That sounds fun. That was fun. Okay. And it led to some interesting times. Fun times. Sorry, I know I'm in on some of this part of the joke that you're not. It's not exactly a joke as much as it is a disastrous thing that had some ramifications. But, some say potato, some say disaster. Okay, so basically, yeah, they formed groups to where they can go and have the kids observe and watch and make notes and who knows, do whatever they do when they're watching them, trying to stay out of their hair, trying to stay back and not get in the way of anything. Famous last words. Now, we started observing them really, this time is roughly around 10,000 years ago, more or less, in the time that we started getting into the observations and really interacting with the Earth on a semi-regular basis rather than just sort of dealing with it here and there and sort of collecting data and whatnot. But yeah, around 10,000 years roughly. And I know that some of you have heard of the Anunnaki or the races from many, many, many years ago. A lot of what you've heard come through the past is related to this time period right here. And some of what you've heard in the past is just folklore, and other things, who knows? I mean, we weren't around observing the Earth, 200, 300,000 years ago. I mean, there's things that you might have heard about in southern Africa that look really mysterious. Well, that's not us. If it was aliens, it's certainly not us. We weren't around for that. I was given that as a very definite no. Yeah. So, could it have been? I wasn't really given a definitive answer on the whole Southern Africa thing. Those mysterious things there. But I was given a definitive no, it's not us. So, 10,000 years, roughly, is what they've been here. And no, there weren't a bunch of fallen angels coming down to just have sex with the natives, as some of you have heard. Not in exactly a manner of speaking, because the parents are very committed and were very wise, and they didn't want to do those types of things. They didn't want to just come down and enslave the population just to enslave them. They had plenty enough stuff, and they didn't really need it. And they certainly don't, feed on humans or anything stupid like that. I mean, humans are a curiosity. They're good to study in terms of data. Yes, we took some genome stuff from them and from the other human groups. What is it? Well, I already talked about it. The Denisovans and the whatever. I forget the other one too. But yeah, we took some splices of the genome stuff to put in our own here and there when it was convenient and worked out scientifically. But really, other than that, we didn't really need anything from the humans. We just studied them like data. We didn't need to enslave them. So that brings up the thing about the fun times that I had mentioned earlier, that it's sort of funny and sort of whoops. You remember how kids like hormones? Well, they don't also like being told what to do. And they certainly don't like being told that they're going to be able to have all this fun later. They want to have fun now. And the whole point in the training was to help the kids understand that the type of lifestyle that seems enticing when you're a kid does not seem enticing when you're hundreds of years old. It just doesn't. That's the point of the training, like I've said. But the point of the training is because people, when they're young, do want those types of things. It's just a natural thing to expect that, wow, that sounds exciting. And so, as some of you might have guessed, yes, we did have some escapees. Sorry to inform you, but yes. They were not adults. I mean, yeah, they were big and they weren't like, like I'm sucking my thumb type stuff. But no, in our society, they were kids. They wanted to go have fun sowing their wild oats and having fun with the natives. They thought the natives were very attractive and very fun. And they wanted to live like kings and have people doing stuff for them. This is all contrary to what our society is. And I know many of you might imagine just a bunch of guys running off to take advantage of the girl. No, it wasn't like that. Our society is such that these kids never even have had experienced such a thing as a reality of sexism. Yeah, there were just as many girls as there were guys that wanted to go and have fun. And they made their plan, they made their escape, and then they made a bunch of fun with the natives. They lived like kings and did who knows what. And this is the point in which things started to go sideways. Because now you had a bunch of kids who, well, I mean, let's face it, they were out and out rebellious. They told a lot of stuff about our society to the natives, some of which still remains in popular formats today. So take, for example, the ancient mystery religions. The ancient mystery religions you might have some familiarity with if you're in the truther movement. It's not that much of a secret now that we have leaders that like to go into the woods and worship an owl or dance naked to an owl or who knows what they do. But it's a lot more devious than just dancing and having fun with weird symbolism. Behind all of the rich, powerful that really has shaped our world over the last thousands of years has been a group of people that have been basically, by and large, following the ancient mystery religions for the most part. There's been, these ancient mystery religions have shaped so much of our world. They've shaped churches that are massively big churches. They've shaped whole religions. They've shaped a lot more than what the rank and file people are familiar with or would ever imagine. This has been a pervasive thing throughout the history of our world here of Earth, and these ancient mystery religions are filled with lots of symbolism. Lots of symbolism you have in your everyday life is put there intentionally because it has this deeper meaning that, well, I'm not going to get into all of it. They believe lots of stuff. They believe it gives it meaning. They believe this and that. I mean, I don't want to get into it. But what I will get into is that some of the symbolism from these ancient religions, it is just pagan in nature. I mean, you've heard of a lot of things that come down from it's like Masonic types of stuff or Illuminati type stuff or cabal or this or that. It all comes down to the same origins. And the symbolism, a lot of it comes from just pagan stuff, like I said, because at its heart, they always were pagans. Before we came down here, they had their beliefs and they stuck to them. When back in the days when our society was just observing, yeah, they had their pagan stuff and they danced around and did all sorts of weird things. It was interesting to watch and collect data on. But it became serious because this is some of the justification that the really powerful have been using to keep fooling us as a people, to keep us under their thumb, and to justify it morally. Now, I mean, getting back to the whole thing about some stuff came from that time frame. Basically, if you remember, the escapees were over-hormoned, quote-unquote, kids that were ready to sow their wild oats and have fun. And like I said, it was a very equal society, not really any sexism at all that they've ever experienced. So no, it was not just boys. It was boys and girls in pretty much the same ratio. They both went down and wanted to have fun and escape the confines of the educational system that had grown to that point. So the things that came into being through their influence, one example would be the number 33. Another example would be gematria. But with the number 33, it didn't originate as just a number 33, the sacred number, or whatever it is that they believe now. I don't honestly keep track of whatever that is they believe, but 33 wasn't 33 when it started. It was third part of the third level. And it originally meant, it was a reference to how it's organized up there in the eternal part of our society, over the part that I'm telling you about. Like I said, it was not 3-3, like 33. It was 3-3, the third part of the third level. If you remember back to the pyramid examples that I was telling you about earlier, you had the 3 levels, and there are more people at the bottom than at the top, and that's true for each one of the levels. Now, I was telling you and about the reason why it's bigger at the bottom than at the top is because it's a natural learning process. It takes you time to get to the top, and you're constantly learning. But thrown into the mix is that there are more kids that are being born as time goes on, and so that when you started, you're amongst a bigger group than what went before you. But as you go up the line, there's even more kids that are being born, and so it's constantly bigger. It's not just like, okay, let's weed them out, but the base is getting bigger, exponentially bigger all the time. And because of the rates of the births of kids, it happens to be where the base of the pyramid is just always bigger than the top. And then you go to the middle level, which is about the learning how to do marriage really well and some other stuff. And then you go up to the third level, which is the adults, and the top would be the leaders of society. Now, the kids that escaped had a beef. They thought that they were being too restrictive. They didn't want to wait so long to go have fun. And they filled the heads of the natives with lots of interesting things, like I said, about some symbolism, some gematria, some ideas about how our society is organized that we're skewed. We're very, very skewed. And so the whole thing about not just number 33, but the whole attitude that came along with that was such that they were looking at it, like I said, that our leaders in the eternal society were taking advantage and seeking power and trying to be there at the top, and force everybody down underneath them just because they're power hungry, and that they were the ones that are having fun, and they basically wanted to be like that. I mean, the problem is it wasn't completely accurate. Yes, they weren't perfect, but the leaders of our society is the Founders Group, as I was telling you about. The Founders Group has been through so much that they look at this as their family. It is their family. It's their kids. Every last one of us is the kids of a founder, or several. And yes, it's not quite to the point yet where the founders have been able to step down from being at the very, very top yet. It's been a long time, I know, but the ultimate goal is to have a free, equal society where this founders group can step down, and the experienced leaders of everybody can get together and rule peacefully, democratically, and all of that. And it is largely democratic. It's mostly democratic. It's almost all democratic. But yeah, at the top there's still the founders group that the buck stops here. They keep it safe, and they're a big force to be reckoned with. And really, their intent is that they're more like family. It is a family structure. But getting back to the kids, that's not the idea that was given to the natives down here. The idea was that the top of the top have the right to rule, and you might hear that it's in the best interest of everybody else because they'll get bruised and whatnot and eventually learn from it. But the main thing that they hold on to is that the leaders have the right to rule. They're going to be above everybody else. They're going to have fun and have relations, and you basically do what they want, live like kings. And so 3-3, or the third part of the third level, became something that was the big sacred idea that they wanted to attain. And then over the many, many years that followed, nobody, and I mean nobody, remembers exactly what, on this side, on the Earth side of things, where that originally came from. Third part of the third level got turned into 33, which got turned into 33 degrees, or tons and tons of references and different meanings that got added to it later, and the original of it just got lost. Now, I mean, that also brings up gematria, like I was telling you. Gematria is complicated sort of numerology, in a sense. Each letter gets a certain meaning, or like a certain count. Like A would be 1, B would be 2, and so on. And there's a lot of different numerology type stuff related to it. You can look up videos such as Zach Hubbard or something like that. He introduces it, as well as a couple other people. Now, the whole thing about gematria is that numbers do not rule the eternities. In a matter of speaking, I mean, numbers do not determine our lives. They're just numbers. I mean, the number 666 for people over there on the eternal side of things has no more different meaning than 665 or 667 or any other number. However, if you remember back to the training of the kids that were going through training, they escaped. Remember, the kids escaped, and they were the ones that were going through training. That was roughly around the time frame that they were doing it. But in the training process, there are simulators. Now, you have to remember that our bodies over there are supplemented with technology, and we're very quick with math. Math is like breathing. It is something that is just plain easy to do. And ridiculously so. So when you get simulator stuff encoded into the simulations are hidden number codes and things that can help you make sense of, how long is the simulation running, how much time does it have left, as well as maybe some other meanings. It got to be where, there's a whole like mini language of little references that you can have with the number coding there. And that's one of the reasons why it happened. It's because of the simulations that the kids were going through. It helped give a really in-depth simulator experience where they can really, really get involved in it. But at the same time, there's subtle hints and subtle clues that were wrapped up there that they could hold on to. And so then the numerology of it, aspect of it, did move into the Earth through those that escaped and brought it to the Earth. And then that got turned into a whole other subject. Now, do we still use numerology on our side? Well, they're very pragmatic. They'll use whatever it takes to get through good meaning to you. And if that's putting some numbers in some places, they certainly will. They're very good at it. But for us, it's not, the good side, it's not as deep of a meaning as some people give it down here on this earth. It's something that's nice and something that can give deep meaning and bring people close together just because of the effort that went into it. If you can put in someone's life a lot of good numbers, going back looking at it, it can sort of mean that, see, look, I went through all this effort for you, and this is the proof that, hey, I was just helping and being there the whole time. But past that, it's no more. Like, just one number isn't going to make you holy, and one number isn't going to make you evil. It's just numbers. But yeah, that's a little bit of the history of the how gematria came into being here. But getting back to it, you had the kids escaped the Earth. Now, I know the video got cut off a little bit. Computer restarted, but like I did say that we're here for 10,000 years, roughly. The people that you have heard about, maybe like in Southern Africa, the weird lines or whatever those things are, that wasn't our society. It was some, who knows? I wasn't told about it because it wasn't us. It could have been just people on the earth or who knows, but it's not us. Likewise, we haven't been here for hundreds of thousands of years. 10,000 years, more or less, is what it's been. Okay, so getting back to the whole interesting thing where the people had escaped. This was pretty much a one-time in history type of thing. You will hear that some people claim to have been the offspring of gods, angels, aliens, Jesus, whatever. That just didn't happen. That's not saying that they weren't told that happened by other people down here, and that's okay. I'm sorry, I'm mumbling a bit, but basically, no, there hasn't been any other time. There's been times, yes, that the lie that Jesus had kids was sort of embraced by some people on our side to do some stuff, but no, Jesus didn't have kids, despite what you've heard. Yeah, they use a lot of stuff, and they did use that a couple times to try to influence people to not do as many bad things, but it's a whole political game. We'll get into that later, but long and the short of it is that's where we're at right now, and the next thing we're going to get into is how we decided, where did we decide to go to next? We had a situation We had a bunch of kids that had just run off escape. We had the realization that we were not as advanced as we thought. We had parents of those kids who were sad because many of their kids were just missing, and who knows if they'd ever come back. And we also had the embarrassing realization that at the time that they escaped, they weren't actually being tagged with the equivalent of GPS locators. Most of them were found eventually, but there were some that weren't. And that was, that was interesting. Okay, so going on, that begged the question of what next? There clearly needed to be something different for kids. Kids needed to have opportunities. Now, going back again in this debate, it went back to the whole thing about, you remember the splinter societies, how some people just went off to basically do whatever and then they never came back? There were some people that did come back. And of the people who realized that their lifestyle was not going anywhere and they came back, they learned really well and became stellar members of society. That helped bring about the next solution. The next solution was that, well, kids want to have an Earth experience that badly. Let's give them an Earth experience. And if you remember, I was also talking about what to do with the Earthlings, because eventually they're going to learn how to do technology and become threats. Well, this also helps with that, because you have the solution to the problem is that the kids get to come down to Earth, have fun, do what they want to do, and when they die, they just come back and learn afterwards. The Earthlings aren't being a threat because basically we've co-opted them. They are now basically, it's one society now. There are no pure Earthlings anymore. It's us and them. I mean, basically the us from the other side comes down, and that's what we call a soul, and that goes into the body here. And when the earth part of you dies, then you go back to your eternal society, and there you have it. It's all weird and interesting, and I'm going to go over that more in detail in the next video. The next video is about how the whole Earth thing started, what it is, how it's organized, and then the interactions between the parents and the Earthlings that are down here. Keeping in mind that, I keep saying it's rocky, but keeping in mind that at first not all Earthlings were in our program. But yeah, that's not for this video. I'm sorry I've been mumbling a bit. It's just hard to go through all of this and make sense of it all in one video with the amount of time that I have. Sorry about all that. I'm going to endeavor to speak more clearly, slowly, and try to not lose anybody. But it was really hard getting this information, and so you got to do some work too. So I will see you in the next video.